Hello, everyone. This is Stefano. We're just letting people in, so give us a second, and then we're gonna get started. Okay, I think we're good to go. Let me go full screen. Okay, thank you guys for joining us today. These are webinar related to sales prep. So we're going to talk a lot about sales today. Josh is with me and we're going to introduce ourselves in a bit. But the topic today is really discussing what are the most common mistakes that usually companies do while hiring sales reps. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about, what are the specific mistakes, what you can actually do to avoid those mistakes. But, first and foremost, we're going to introduce ourselves quickly. I'll start. My name is Stefano Bellasio. The reason why I wanted to focus specifically on this topic is actually because I had to do a lot of sales hiring in my career. Previously at a company that I started that is called Cloud Academy, that I led for more than 10 years. And now, of course, at Anthropos. And of course, I lived all the pains of interviewing a lot of salespeople, not having a clue on who was the right one, but at the same time, also making some of the mistakes in hiring them, and of course, making sure that we could somehow fix the team or change the team down the road. So today that's going to be a lot from our experience, and Josh is joining me today with a slightly different experience, but still very valuable. Josh, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Stefano. Hey, everyone. My name is Josh Sipher. I've been working in software sales for about 7 years now. I've been both an individual contributor as well as hired, managed, and coached sales team. So I'm happy to discuss and looking forward to it.
Exactly. Thank you, Josh. And today we're going to focus specifically on account executives and BDRs. So a lot of, what we are talking about today is specifically for those roles. Personally, I've seen a lot of other things when it comes down to go to market. So customer success, partnerships, customer account managers. But, the reality is actually that today we're going to give you specific advices and, specific experience from, hiring BDRs and account executives. And last but not least, of course, I know that some of you might not be specifically on software sales and enterprise sales, but most of our experience, for both Josh and I, is actually on SaaS enterprise and B2B sales. So we're gonna be referring to that. With that being said, why is hiring salespeople so critical for the business, and why is actually hiring the right salespeople so critical? Well, the first thing is actually that sales, needless to say, is going to have direct impact to your revenues, right? So whoever you're going to bring into your team is going to either close new contracts or work with the existing customers, and of course, both of them are vital for the success of the organization. The second reason why hiring the right people is so important when it comes down to sales is actually that interviewing them is a bit more challenging than other roles, honestly. Because sales is a mix of soft and hard skills. So of course, specifically in software, I think, you want to have someone that has technical skills, but at the same time, they need to have all the soft skills that come with a sales role. So the negotiation part, the ability to have empathy, all those kind of things. And so all of a sudden, the interview really becomes quite challenging. Third point is these people are usually good at interviewing. So they're going to be able to sell you their, professional activities in the past, what they've done, the Rolodex, anything that, of course, might be very promising at first, but, you want to do your homework and really deep dive into their experience. Last but not least, I think that hiring the right salespeople is critical, but the reason is actually that there are a lot of sales professionals in the market, but ultimately sales is a tough game. Honestly, it's a tough job, and it's about persistence, the ability to solve problems, and really work with details. So I think that specifically at different stages of the company, you really need those three skills applied in a specific way, and it's really difficult to assess that. It's really difficult to understand exactly what are, the people that can really bring, what they tell you in the interview to the next step in your organization. Let me, before, we're going to get into the 5 mistakes. So we're going to cover all of them. We're going to spend about 20 minutes doing that. The thing that I want to share with you is, what I've learned personally in these 12 plus years, when it comes down to sales hiring. The first one is like you need to have a process and you need to trust it. So every single time I basically fell in love with a candidate, or I said, well, maybe we can actually skip this assessment, or we can skip this other interview because we like this person so much. Every single time that has been a problem. So I think that the main reason, the main learning for me is actually if you skip some parts of the process, you're actually signing up for a big risk, and that's fine. You can do that for a lot of other roles. The biggest difference is actually that sales mistakes are a lot more expensive. And I said you truly feel that months after, because whenever you find someone that is not going to be a right fit for the company, it's usually going to take you 3 6 months, I would say more 6 months, to realize that, because they need to learn the product, they need to start reaching out to existing customers or new customers, they need to, of course, build their pipeline. And so it's really going to be a slow process if you think about 6 months to understand that. Plus, whenever you need to replace that person because, they were not a fit, you need to spend at least other 2 3 months to find the right person and start over with the training. So that's becoming really, really expensive at the end of the day. The other two things that I found, are the most important ones when it comes down to hiring salespeople, and we're going to talk a lot about skills and what they should be able to do, are really coachability and tenacity. So coachability really is like, of course, maybe these people come from a different industry, they come from a different product, they were selling something that was, smaller or bigger in terms of size before. But if they are coachable, I think most of the time you can actually turn them into successful people. And so that's an amazing skill that you really need to find, otherwise probably not worth it. And the second one is tenacity. So their ability to say like, okay, we're trying this territory and it's not working out, or, we're trying this other persona and it's not working out. So you really need to have someone that is committed to that, that is not gonna give up. And of course, wants to see all of that through, right? And last but not least, curiosity. I think that every single time I've hired sales reps that didn't really have a lot of questions for us, they didn't really go deep into our story, into our product, into our customer base, all that basically came back and was a mistake for us, because of course they were not that committed. They didn't have, a lot of thinking about our product. They didn't have a lot of thinking about our, customer base. And that's usually a pretty bad sign in the interview process. But with that being said, let's start with the mistakes. I think, we're going to go one by one. We have 5 of them. And Josh and I are going to use our experience just to bring some examples and some details into this. So the first one is really what I was mentioning before, falling for their charm and ability to impress or to interview. It depends. I think that this is pretty common. Honestly, it happened a lot at the beginning of my career. When we started Cloud Academy, we're actually hiring the first few salespeople in the US, and we met with a lot of people that were basically, using their previous companies to say like, hey, I've done this before. You guys are so much smaller, so I'm gonna be able to do this quickly and really bring the first customers in. Later on, the same thing happened because the company was becoming slightly bigger, and we had a lot of people coming by and say like, well, I know that you guys are doing 10 million or 15 million. We can actually, I've seen that play before. I can actually get you to the next level, and I can absolutely sell to enterprise customers. I think that the kind of the problem with those type of candidates is usually the fact that they cannot really get into details. So whenever I was asking them like, walk me through how you close Oracle, how you close this big enterprise company, they were not able to get into the details, right? So that was a big learning for me, is like, if you talk to a really good salesperson, they're gonna be able to really tell you anything about the deals that they closed. I'm not talking about like, 10 years before, but like, 2, 3 years before, they can actually tell you how much was, the deal, what were, the people involved, their names, the details, who was the negotiation process like, everything, right? So whenever I found myself in that type of situations, I was actually saying like, hey, walk me through this. And that was enough to do that. The last thing that usually happens with these type of candidates is actually that they spend a lot of time trying to impress you. So name dropping, anything else that basically sometimes is not even required when they meet with, the manager or, C level. That's usually an indication, right? Josh, I don't know if that's something that you can, relate with from your experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely been a victim to falling for, charm of some of the candidates that I've spoken with. And, it's happened to me a couple times where, I've had candidates, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, Stefano, but had a great resume, did a really good job on the interview. They've previously smashed their quotas, but, I still, feel like I don't know how they're actually going to interact in the actual role. I think that the company I worked for before this was a very technical product, so you had to have a very specific skill set. And, I can think of one rep in particular that, really did an incredible job on the interview. And, I do remember thinking, that's great. He's a salesperson, but how's he actually going to sell in, in my specific industry? And
Right.
that's what ended up, making this guy fail was the technical ability.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Okay, so that's the first one. And I think again, like, trying to get into details, really asking them about their strategy, like, show me how you would actually do something like this, and how you did something like this with previous customers is gonna show you if they've done it or not. Okay, the second one is important. So going back to the point that, most of the candidates in sales are really good at interviewing, at least, I would say 90% of them. I think that at the end of the day, sales is a tough job, as we said, but it also requires a lot of different skills. So to me, the biggest failure that we had in the past, or even at Anthropos, honestly, has been like not really testing their skills, the real skills. And with that, I mean like either write things, how they talk to people, can they be assertive, right, when they need to be, and also do they care about a customer? So we said here customer obsessed, but it's really like, do they really care about a customer? Or are they just, in the game because, they wanna have, a gig in sales and nothing else. So I think that, that's something that of course, it's truly important. Even today when you can use AI and all those kind of things, I think this is even more important because I don't really care if they are going to be using AI to do some of these things or, if they're actually helping themselves with, internal tools, but I want them to really care about, the way they communicate, the way they basically show empathy and build relationship with customers. And the third point is about cold calling. I think like, in today's market, there are a lot of people and a lot of companies that are, really looking for that type of skill. So doing outreach, really cold call or, outbound to build a pipeline. I think in my experience, it's, one of those things where, I would ask any candidate, they would go, absolutely, I can do that. I've done that before. And then, they were getting to the organization and they were struggling with that. So that was probably, the last thing in the week that they were prioritizing. It was always like an excuse like, hey, I couldn't cold call because I had this issue, or, I couldn't reach out to these people because I didn't have the data. And honestly, the reality was actually that they were not confident with that or they didn't really do it. So one thing that you can do is actually ask them to complete assignments. I think, that's a powerful way to assess the skills, especially like, present them a case saying like, hey, let's say that you need to get into this kind of company. What are you going to be doing? What are kind of the emails that you're going to be writing? What are the steps, right? You also want to make sure that they can strategize about that, not just thinking like, okay, I'm going to send out an email and see what happens. What do you do if they don't reply? What else? So basically scope out the entire strategy I think you want to definitely try to understand if they can talk to your personas, meaning like, are they confident talking or reaching out to a VP or to a director? If they've done that before, they shouldn't have any issue. If they haven't done it, that's something that is going to be an obstacle. And personally, in the past, I asked them like, can you send me, of course, without details or masking that details, can you send me some of the emails that you sent in the past? Can I actually see some of your interactions? Because I think that's very valuable to see exactly how they build a conversation, how to build a relationship, what they do with role plays. So what if there is an urgency with a customer? What if there is, something that is critical? What are you going to be doing? Right. And so I think that, you can actually get examples. So I would always ask them, like, can you send me something that you've done in the past? That's probably the best thing you can do. At the same time, I would assign them projects and assignments, right? And then review those and really discuss them discuss those assignments with them. Josh, you've done an assignment together here. I'm sure you've done, others in the past, but what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that role plays have always been helpful, but not super realistic. I also like to see what you were saying is kind of how the candidate writes. So I'll generally ask them to do, some sort of writing assignment, but most importantly, I'm actually looking for how quickly and how detailed they get back to me. I don't want a candidate who takes a week to do, a simple assignment.
Right, right. Okay. Number three is an interesting one. Um, And I'm sure that, I'm actually talking to people that might have a different idea about this. But I think that one of the mistakes that we have done in the past, and one of the mistakes that I've seen um, other companies doing is actually not testing the ability of sales reps to learn their products. Because, customers today really want to talk to people that are very familiar with the product, that know the product very well. And second, because because usually sales reps that know the product very well, they can easily sell easier and faster, right? One thing that you're going to notice in today's market, and I think that has been valid for the last 10 plus years, is actually that customers really want to work with salespeople that can be consultants, that can actually help them really implement things, that can actually help them really see the real value of what they're selling and how they can apply that to their business instead of having someone that is just trying to get them over the line with the signature and then it's going to disappear. Or, even worse. And I think, I talk based on, also my experience, like, buying products. You don't really want to have someone that is like, okay, I need to go and talk to my sales engineer for everything, right? Because, that person is probably not adding a ton of value. It's actually slowing you down. And in a lot of situations, kind of the reaction on the customer side is like, okay, it's clear that we should have probably had this conversation with the sales engineer, not with the account executive. And why do we need to talk to the account executive? So I think that that's something that you really need to test. There are a lot of companies, and it really depends on the size of the organization that are forcing their people to do product demos. I think that even if that's something that you don't require inside your organization because of many reasons, maybe you're too big by now to do something like that. I think that actually during the interview process, you should probably ask them to do a demo of their product, right? Or, really walk you through, the ROI and the solution that they sell. What are they selling? What kind of value does it create for their customers? And what is also, that's something that we didn't put here, but I think that as they learn the product, they're going to be learning about a competition and they should be able to talk about a competition. They should be able to say like, hey, those are things that we do slightly better compared to other companies in the market, or these are things that actually differentiate us. And all of that is basically going back to the fact that they do know about a product. Um, if you think about this, another consequence of this is usually the fact that if they don't ask enough questions during the interview process about a product, it's actually because they're probably not that interested. Or, you have a lot of candidates usually that they think like, it's not my job to know the product well. I actually have engineers, I actually have sales engineers, I actually have other people that can speak about it. While instead, in my experience, those type of candidates are usually not a fit, right? They're going to be more difficult to manage and less productive. Okay, this is an interesting one. I think, this might be um, true for a lot of other roles, but I think especially in sales, one of the mistakes that I've done in the past was actually really hiring people that knew everything. So they were, absolutely confident talking to customers. They spoke well, they communicated well, but at the end of the day, they were really not tech savvy, right? That's something that happened to me a few times, and I think every single time that somehow didn't work out. I think that especially if these salespeople are working in a software space, or they're working with tech companies, they need to be able to use technology, right? That's kind of the basic for me, and I think it's something that it's usually a good indicator of the fact that they can actually learn things, they can actually be independent. The other thing that I think it's really important is making sure that they're not lone wolves, meaning like they know to work with your product team, they know to work with your marketing team. And that, of course, is vital when the company is smaller, when it's like, 50 people, 100 people, they need to rely on a lot of other departments to close deals, to actually run a full sales cycle. But even after that, I do think that the best people know how to pull in, the specific subject matter expert. They know how to talk to marketing. They know how to talk to product to get someone prioritized that otherwise wouldn't get prioritized for that deal. And so I think that usually what you want to do in those cases is saying like, I'm going to introduce you to someone in my product organization. I'm going to introduce you to someone in my marketing organization. So you should really get those type of interviews and feedback from other departments. But also, I think that, to prove that they can actually be independent, they can actually be tech savvy enough, you can actually ask them to create something like, hey, can you send me a quick presentation? It could be a slide, it could be two slides, it could be part of the process. With that, it's going to show you how quickly they can do something like that, how good they are at doing something like that. So I think that's something that you can then use to share feedback and say, okay, this what went well. This would probably would have been done differently inside this organization, and also see how they react. Just did they ever ask you anything of this as a candidate?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one thing that I want to talk about that's on this slide that I really like is the ability to collaborate. I think that's a very, very important skill, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying. I'll always ask the candidate, especially if I'm hiring for an account executive role, who have they got on their current team, if they have an SDR under them, if they have a sales engineer,
Right.
their relationship with their manager, as well as other departments within the company like product or marketing. I want to see, how they're actually interacting with these people. It takes many more people than just a sales rep to actually get these deals closed. And I do think, that's a pretty vital skill to have. Um, I'll also always have the chance, interview with, a current member on my team as well, who would actually be their coworker. So again, I want to see what that interaction looks like as well.
What do you think is kind of, a good test to see if they can collaborate with you? Like, even like, when they join the organization, how can you quickly assess, that capability, saying like, oh, there is something wrong here? What are usually the signs, or, what are the tests that you have seen being working out well?
I think that one of the biggest things is just getting feedback from my last point, which is getting feedback from the people that are on that team currently, and seeing if they're one, a culture fit, but are able to present things the same way that they're presenting them to me as the hiring manager. So the way that they, their presentation skills, the way that they actually come off is very, very important.
Right. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the last one. Um, I love this one. I think, it's something that it's really important in sales, even more in a market that is highly competitive. And I think, we're to some extent, every company is in a very competitive market today, especially if it's, in technology. I think that speed and ability to have sense of urgency really change the ability of, salespeople to close deals. And that could be just, to make that a bit more concrete. That could be like, the ability to come back with a response to a technical question, the ability to basically go to the extra mile and say like, look, I'm gonna try to build a case for you and really show you how we can help you with this solution. Or it could be something where, the customer actually needs some kind of, compliance response pretty quickly, and the salesperson is gonna go to the extra mile to get that from the team. So I think that all of that is vital. And usually the mistake that I've done was really hiring people that I didn't test for sense of urgency. I didn't see them replying to my emails, quickly enough. And I somehow justified that saying, well, they're working full time at another job, or they do have other things going on, or they might be off this week or anything like that. I think that's usually a pretty bad sign. And every single time, kind of, what I've seen with them from that perspective in the interview process was actually their style working, right? So they couldn't reply to emails, in a day, or, they couldn't do really anything that was urgent, right, for the customers. And the second thing is really their ability to operate without a large team. I think even if they are inside a big organization, they should be able to be independent. You really want to have someone that is going to be frugal enough, that is going to be able enough to move things forward, even if they don't have a big team, even if the sales engineer is out that week. Usually, those type of people are the ones that are going to be more appreciated by customers and are the ones that are going to be able to really close deals where, everything looked like, impossible in my experience. The thing that that I've done in the past is like, as I said, looking at how quickly they can respond to emails. Um, I was introducing them to people and I was like, okay, let me introduce this person to an advisor. Let me introduce this person even to an investor in the early day and say like, how quickly are they going to jump on that thread of emails? How quickly are they going to be able to have a call? And so that's usually a good sign of like, how committed they are, like how much they like your opportunity, but also how they work, right? Because, I found that people that usually have that sense of urgency, they're going to do that for any type of interview. They're not going to be like, hey, I'm prioritizing this one. I'm not going to do that for the other one. And the other way you can actually test this in the interview process is actually giving them some real tests, saying like, hey, this is happening inside our organization. What would you do? Like, we had an urgent meeting that we had to do. What would you have done? Or, we have a customer that is actually experiencing this. What's your take on that? To really try to understand, they think about those things is going to tell you a lot about their sense of urgency. And Josh, I know that you like this a lot, like I do. So I don't know if that's something that you can share, anything with our attendees with.
Yeah, I want to take this from more of an SDR BDR standpoint. I've
Hmm.
managed some SDR teams in the past, and you really have to think about it like these SDRs or BDRs are actually the first people who are going to make contact with a potential customer, so a prospect, right? You
Sure.
want to make sure that interaction is a great interaction. So someone who's, gonna take 3 days to respond to a demo request is not someone that, I want on the team. I always think about it like if this was if we had two products, my product and a competitor's product, and they were very, very similar from a technical perspective and from a use case perspective, the person's going to go with the sales rep that responds the fastest and helps them the most. And you can't do that if you don't have a sense of urgency.
Right. Did you get what kind of tests did you see in your career for something like this? Like, did you get tested for something like that in the past?
I think that it's always going to be, in my career, actually doing the hiring process as a candidate, I always will try to respond very, very quickly, and that's how I operate in a day to day. I respond to my customers very, very quickly. So when I'm actually being the hiring manager, I want to see how quickly these people are responding to me. So very similarly, like you said, Stefano, when you're uh, referring these people out to like a third party consultant
Yep.
or an investor, you want to see, how quickly they jump on that opportunity to take that. So that's super important as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, so these are, the five mistakes. I hope that you guys have learned something about all of them. We're happy to follow up with you if you have any specific questions. What we wanted to spend the last 15, 20 minutes on is also sharing with you how we actually took a lot of these experience and brought it into our product. Anthropos is a solution that allows you to really screen people and specifically like customer facing roles in real life scenarios. And so a lot of these learnings, a lot of things that we experienced in our previous experiences are things that we introduce in the product one way or the other to really help companies, to really help manager test for these things. Josh is going to show us quickly a demo of a specific simulation that is related to sales. But at the same time, what I want all of you to appreciate is the fact that you can test these people in real life scenarios with other people. So you can listen to how they talk, you can actually see how they write things, and you can actually see how they react to things as well, which I think is really, really important. So that's how we're going to spend the last, I would say, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So over to you, Josh, and feel free to stop us if you have questions. I didn't say that before, but feel free to use the chat as well to send us questions.
Cool. So let me share my screen.
Sure.
There we go. Great. So this is the Anthropos platform. I do kind of want to give a very quick high level of kind of what we're focused on, where we fit in the market, what are some of the use cases that we're focused on, and then I'll kind of jump into to show you both how to build your own simulation, but as well as what the simulations actually look like. So you might be asking, what are AI simulations? So, we offer AI simulations specifically for hiring, and what these are realistic workplace scenarios that are actually going to be immersing the candidates in an interactive, very lifelike experience. So our technology is actually using AI to essentially replicate, what an everyday business challenge would look like, but doing this within a controlled environment. And this will allow a hiring manager, someone in talent acquisition, to actually get insight into how that candidate thinks, how they interact, how they ask questions, what type of questions they're asking, etc. And I want to be clear, this is not an AI interview. Candidates are actually in a real world scenario. An example would be if I'm hiring for an SDR candidate, I would put this SDR candidate in a real workplace rather example where they have to do a cold call with a prospect who's using a competitor, right? So I'm just making these things up off the top of my head, but I think that you get the point that we can put this person in whatever your organization would be coded to them. So let's look at what Anthropos actually looks like. This is our home screen here. These are some of the different simulations that we have that we're actually using internally to hire. So when we're hiring BDRs, CSMs, account executives, product managers, we're actually sending them these simulations to take. So let's focus on this account executive simulation that we have here. This is the one that we're actually going to take today. What I want you to notice is these specific skills that we're looking at. So active listening, client relationship building, and consultative selling techniques. The way the AI actually works is actually going to look at these skills in a two-prong approach. The first is just binary, 0 or 1. Did they do any sort of active listening? Did they do any sort of relationship building? Did they do any sort of, or use any sort of, rather, selling techniques? And if they did, it's actually going to give them a skill score on 1 to 5 on how well they actually showed that skill. So the first thing I want to show is kind of how these simulations are actually built. And I think it will give the audience here a good idea of what it takes to build these simulations and actually help you understand how they work. So let me zoom in there. So this is Anthropos Studio. This is where we can actually create our custom simulations. So I'm going to click create. And it's going to bring me to this screen. In this screen, I'm actually going to be either describing a specific scenario that I want. So I can describe that SDR cold call scenario. Or what I can do is actually just add in a job description. And I can take any open job rec, just copy and paste that. I actually have one here. I took a random Salesforce job description. This is one of their account executive roles. I would just copy and paste this. And it's going to create a scenario where player just means the candidate, is an account executive at Salesforce focusing on higher education clients. Great. So when I add this in, the AI is actually going to recommend some potential scenarios that our customers are actually using when they're hiring for account executives. So present a tailored demo to a university, resolve urgent client data issue, or negotiate renewal with Provost. So I'm actually going to be creating this custom simulation here. So I'm going to click continue. Oh, Stefano, do we have a question in the chat? Let's see.
Sorry, I just replied to that. So no worries.
Okay, cool. The other thing I can do is actually add another document when we're helping sales teams hire. What they'll do is add a product overview or a specific sales playbook or a sales methodology that they're looking to focus on. That way they can assess their candidates on those specific skills. I've obviously had quite a few candidates who have these certifications on their resumes, like MedPick or like BANT, for example, or Challenger, but I don't actually know if they actually know how to use those. It's just words on a resume. So we want to actually test these people or assess these people on how well they actually know those certifications. So I'm gonna click generate. What the AI is doing is actually taking all the text I've written in, as well as any of the PDFs that I uploaded, and it's gonna create a scenario for us. So I've created a scenario where a player must retain a hesitant higher education Salesforce client. Great. So you're an AE at Salesforce, responsible for a higher education clients in the Pacific Northwest. A longstanding community college customer is hesitant to renew their Salesforce contract, citing the budget tightening and confusion over the tangible value brought by recent product updates. In a scheduled call with the colleague's decision maker, you must defend the ROI of Salesforce solutions, address their concerns, and identify new ways the platform can support their mission critical objectives while retaining the account. So as you can see, this is very realistic to what this candidate would actually see in a day-to-day. Everything here is actually customizable. So I can make this specific to Salesforce. I could also adjust the difficulty here. One of the cool things I like to do is chat with AI to actually help improve this. So one of the things I like to do is actually assess people for both their soft and hard skills. So I can say, let's assess this candidate on both soft and hard skills. Please create 2 tasks to assess for each. So I want to see, what they look like from a soft skills perspective, as well as, some of their technical skills, if they know Salesforce, if they know, about the market, that sort of thing. So now what the AI has actually done is created 2 specific tasks for this candidate to take during the simulation. So we have a soft skill task and a hard skill task. Great. We can put this in our sales and account management. We have different categories that you can put this in just to manage them. We also have different templates. Generally for these entry-level sales roles, we'll just do a micro assessment, which is just a 30 to 45-minute assessment. We also have scenario, which is a longer assessment, which is 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And this will also have a written piece at the end. So we'll ask the candidate to compile everything they've learned, within a document, and the AI is actually going to provide them feedback based on how well they've written, what they're writing about, etc. I think the most important part is actually looking at specific skills. So these are the skills that the AI is actually recommending we assess, but you can change or take these out. We actually have a skill taxonomy of about 60,000 skills that you can look at. If you want to change something like how well they actually know Salesforce, we can add that in. If you want to look at, if you want to look at, let's say this is a very important role where we need to look at MEDIC or MEDPIC sales methodology, we can assess them based on that. And again, we can upload any documents that we need. We want to actually give the AI as much context as we possibly can based on the role to make it very realistic or lifelike. From here, I will just actually click generate, and it's actually going to take all the information that I've given it, and then it's going to output a simulation. Usually takes 10-15 minutes depending on the amount of skills, as well as the amount of detail or complexity that I've added. And once that's ready, it's actually going to shoot me an email. So I have that ready to go. Where I want to go is actually show you what these, let me go back to the demo account, sorry. What these actually simulations look like. So let me go into our library of simulations here. We do have some pre-built simulations. We actually have, let me show you on this account. We actually have over 200 simulations. So a lot of our customers will build their own simulations, but we also have some pre-canned ones for all these different types of roles. So let me go back to our demo account. And again, I'm going to take this account executive role. So this is actually what the candidate will see. So this is the first thing the candidate will see from their perspective. They'll open up this page. There's actually going to be two videos that they're going to see. They're going to see a video kind of explaining what the simulation is and what the scenario is, what role you're playing. And this one, again, we're playing an account executive in Anthropos. That's my job, so I know it very well. I've also taken the simulation a few times, obviously, when I've done demos. And then the second thing is a video that's actually going to show what an AI simulation is in general. This is a pretty innovative technology, so maybe people don't have a full grasp of what an AI simulation is. So this is just a basic video. Each of these are about 1 minute. We can also just read everything that we need to know here. Everything's written out as well. Just for time saving, I'll kind of explain what's going on. I'm playing an account executive, and I have to speak with two AI characters. One is playing my sales manager, and the other one is actually playing the prospect. So the prospect that I'm actually speaking with is someone that is a bit hesitant to look into software. She's been let down by a previous applicant tracking system in the past, so another software provider. So she's a little bit hesitant, but she does have some good use cases for us. She has roles that are very, very high volume. She has over 300 resumes that she's having a difficult time screening for. So she's looking for a tool to help increase, her screening time, or excuse me, decrease her screening time, increase the efficiency. And then these are the skills that we're actually going to be looking at. Again, I know I briefly touched on these earlier. So I'm going to click start. So AI simulations are real life scenarios that actually help you test and learn new skills. Each AI simulation is a chat with multiple AI actors with a clear mission to complete. And then after the simulation, you'll get feedback and a skill score along with tips for improvement. And then again, it's going to show you, what the video is and what your scenario is, just to hammer it in. So I'm going to click start. So this is what the simulation actually looks like. This does look like a chat. It's actually much more powerful than just a standard chat. Again, there's a couple different, excuse me, a couple different AI characters that I actually need to uh, communicate with. We have Ethan, who's actually playing my sales director, and then we have Jessica, who's actually playing the prospect. And on the right side, we're actually going to be able to review the scenario again if we need it, and then it's going to show us our tasks. We want to make this as realistic as possible, so we also do have a timer. This is all configurable. Everything here that you guys are seeing is completely customizable in terms of the actual timer, the how many AI actors, their personalities. Like I said, in this specific one, we made Jessica a little bit more defensive. But let's actually review what our goals are. So we need to build rapport and uncover pain points. It's going to give a little bit more detail here. And then we need to position Anthropos' AI solution as credible. We have another chat here. Stefano, do you want to jump in and answer some of these questions?
Sure, let me do that.
So Chris is asking, at what step of the hiring process do you think it's best to use these simulations? Stefan, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, sure. Chris, hi, thank you for the question. So we usually have two separate stages where our customers are using them. The first one is to really screen candidates up front. So we have customers that are actually putting this into the job description, especially for roles that are like, BDR roles, more junior level roles. They can actually take the simulations immediately, and they're going to be able to see motivation. They're going to be able to see what are the candidates that perform better. But we also have really another strong case, which is actually after the initial conversation. So sometimes we have HR people really screening, do the first screening, the first pass on that candidates. And then, they actually send them the simulation. That's usually something that they do because they can actually save time on really, introducing them to subject matter experts, introducing them to other salespeople inside the organization, and they can actually focus just on the best candidates. To be honest, I mean, we don't see that a lot, but we also have companies that are using this toward the end of the process. The advantage of simulation is actually that it's completely unbiased. So you're gonna get, an unbiased way of looking at their skills, of looking at how they do things, how they talk. And that's something that a lot of companies usually value when they say, like, have a lot of, candidates initially. I got to a short list. Now I want to get also an unbiased feedback on them. So those are usually the stages that we see. The first 2 months are the most popular.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully you're able to answer that question, Chris. Feel free to chat again
Yep.
if you need some more clarification. Um, so what I'm actually doing in this simulation now, I'm gonna actually speak with Ethan, who's my sales director. Ethan's kind of guiding me what I need to accomplish on today's scenario. So again, he's gonna reiterate what I need to do. So I can say, hi, Ethan. Thanks for the insight. Do we know any specific pain points that Jessica is facing? So here I'm actually having a dynamic conversation with my sales manager. This is not anything that's pre-canned. Um, Ethan is always going to respond depending on, what I'm asking and what kind of insight I'm providing. So I know I mentioned some of this prior. Ethan's giving me some more information. She's spending 20 hours weekly reviewing 300 plus resumes, with the 75% being unqualified candidates. So she has a huge number of unqualified candidates, a high turnover rate. Uh, Cost of a bad hire is costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, mentioning something very specific, what's particularly challenging is the rise of the AI generated resumes, making it harder to actually screen candidates. So people are just putting their resumes through GPT and doing one click applies. So it's going to be very difficult. So I'm actually going to go to Jessica and actually speak with her. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet, you can chat, but you can also use audio. A lot of our customers, what they're doing, especially for some of these sales or customer facing roles, is they're actually completely cutting out the text and just using audio. Why that's important, obviously, as a salesperson, you want to understand how that person is talking, their cadence, their tonality, how they're asking questions. So let's use the audio for this one. Hi, Jessica. This is Josh. I happy to help you today. I heard that you're having difficulty screening candidates, and you have tons of candidates in just a couple of roles. I'm curious, what does your current assessment or screening process look like? So again, I'm going to be able to have this dynamic conversation with Jessica, and she will actually respond via audio. So I can either turn this on or off. I'll leave it on just so everyone can kind of hear how she's talking. But again, this is all completely configurable of the personality of this person, if you want them to be more defensive, less defensive, um, etc. So let's see what Jessica says.
Hey, Josh. Honestly, it's a lot right now. I'm spending at least 20 hours a week just sorting through resumes, and that's just the initial screenings. The vol-
I'm not gonna let her go the whole time, but I think you get the point that we'll have a completely audio conversation here back and forth. I'm obviously gonna try to build some rapport and uncover some more pain points, and then I'm gonna, sort of convince her that working with software companies is not always as bad as her last experience. So I'm actually going to click complete. I know we're shorter on time here, so I'm going to try to hurry things up. And I want to show what the actual feedback page looks like. So what we're going to look at now, just to be clear, is the feedback page that the candidate will see. And then I'll show you what it looks like from a management perspective, that a candidate wouldn't see. So what the AI is doing is actually taking all the inputs that I've given it, all the text and audio messages, and it's actually going to assess me again based on these specific skills that we've put in prior. So it's going to take probably about 10 more seconds, and we'll have oh, here we go, and we'll have the assessment. It's going to share a paragraph on kind of what I did well and what are some of the things I can improve on, and they'll give me a more detailed overview or feedback on these specific skills. So this is the paragraph that's going to share. It's going to show me my score. Obviously, I didn't really do much on this simulation, so I didn't score very well, but it's also going to say, how many messages I sent and who I actually engaged with. This is where I think is really important, and I want to be clear. This is something that is not needed. Some of our customers do not like the feedback page, so we can cut this out. Personally, from a candidate experience standpoint, I always loved getting some unbiased feedback here. So I would love this if I was a candidate, right? And this is something that when obviously Stefano gave me a simulation when I was hiring for this job, that I really liked about that process. So we're going to look at these specific skills. Again, it's active listening, client relationship building, consultative selling techniques, and it's going to show me, what are the things I did well and what can be improved on. What I want to go to now is actually showing from a hiring manager or talent acquisition side of, what it will look like for your end. So those are all the simulations that I took, that candidates have taken. And then I clicked into this specific simulation. This is the one that I just took. It's going to show me all the different candidates that took it. Clearly, I don't want to be spending too much time with Mario, Lisa, or Stefano, but I want to be spending a lot of my time and, obviously moving them along the process with Christian as well as Josh. So I'm actually going to go into Christian. He scored really well here. I'm going to go into his actual page. We're going to provide a couple things. The first thing is the job fit analysis. So based on the job description that I pasted in to create this simulation, it's going to show me a job fit analysis. We're also going to be able to go back and look at that candidate's full session recording. So we're going to see exactly what they've been doing. We're going to be able to pull out specific voice extracts.
Okay, thank you. Totally understand.
So that's Christian. Obviously, he's Italian, so you can hear that through his accent. And then you can also get looking at actual key moments, or just go back and explore the full conversation. So I can go back into him and see, how he's talking, what he's saying, all these different things. Let me go back. And then I know I didn't mention this already, so I'll touch on this. We actually do have a full anti-cheat. So we'll be able to identify if these folks are using a ChatGPT, another LLM, if they're jumping between tabs. We're actually looking at their keystrokes, their mouse move, and everything to see kind of what they're doing, if they're copying and pasting. Obviously, Christian didn't cheat on this one, but I think that you'll get the point that we'll be able to identify some of those things. And then we're actually going to be able to highlight the strengths and weaknesses of these candidates. So Christian did a really good job on this one. So he only has strengths, but obviously if there are some things they need to improve on, I'm just going to show specific weaknesses as well. And then we're going to show the commitment as well as the motivation, how fast they actually completed the simulation, what amount of time they used, etc. Obviously, if it takes someone, I send out a simulation, it takes them 2 weeks to complete, maybe they're not the most motivated. Or if I give them a 30-minute simulation and they spend 2 minutes on it, they're probably not the most committed. So it's going to give you some of that, those details that are going to be very difficult to assess for just doing, using a traditional hiring process. And then this is, again, what I like the most is it's actually going to give more detailed feedback on, what Christian did well, what could be improved on. And it's actually going to give them a skill score on how well they were actually assessed based on these specific skills. And then quickly, the last thing I want to show is actually how easy it is to actually send out simulations. I can add people in here just through the simple add. Or what a lot of our customers are doing is actually just generating a public link, and then they'll actually paste this on the job description. So before they speak with the recruiter, before they speak with the hiring manager, they actually have to take the simulation to assess their skills. That way, we'll be able to understand who should I be spending the most time with, who should I actually spend the effort on. So I can generate a public link here. I want them, I'll give them, let's do 10 days to complete it. I want to activate voice only mode, and then I need this to expire, in 10 days. And I'll click generate the link, and then I can just paste that onto a simulation. So I think that wraps everything up. Stefano, is there anything else you'd like me to show? I know we're cutting close
No,
on
I
time
think
here.
we are almost over time. So thank you so much, guys, for attending the webinar today. We're going to share the recording with all of you. We're going to share the slides as well. And thank you, Josh, for the demo and the help with this.
Yeah,
Thank you
of
so
course.
much. Have a
Thanks,
great one.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.